I see today that Trump put out a statement in which he says he has been notified that he might be facing another indictment. This is also from Jack Smith, the special counsel, and the indictment would be over somehow inciting January 6th, inciting an effort to overthrow the government, supposedly. I mean, the whole thing is preposterous and laughable, but nevertheless, it's not laughable in the sense that it is seemingly going to court. I'm going to talk in more detail about that tomorrow as I dive into it a little bit more. But today I want to talk about something that I mentioned yesterday and I'm picking up today, and that is the Georgia case, the case involving Trump supposedly trying to interfere with the Georgia election. And a lot of that focuses specifically on Trump's call, his phone call with Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensberger. Now, I've got a transcript of the call. The call lasted almost an hour. Trump was on the call. Mark Meadows, Chief of Staff. Cleta Mitchell, an election specialist, was on. And then from the Georgia side, you had Raffensberger and you had a guy named Germany. His last name is Germany. And this was a guy also essentially defending the Raffensperger position and saying that there was no significant fraud in the Georgia election results. But I want to read some of the statements by Trump because while the media loves to pull out the line where he's talking about, quote, finding 11,000 votes, and the clear implication is that he wants some shenanigans to take place. He wants them to sort of fish out these votes, even though there are no such votes. The context of the call, and I think any reasonable person who looks at this transcript will recognize that Trump is not saying that at all. What Trump is saying is we won Georgia by a huge margin, and there's easily more than the 11,000 or 12,000 vote margin of legitimate votes there that he won, that he wants Raffensperger to, quote, find. In other words, locate the authentic votes that were not counted, depriving Trump of his legitimate election victory. So let me read a few lines from the call that are a fair representation of what Trump is saying on the call. He says, I think it's pretty clear that we won. We won very substantially in Georgia. So start with that. Trump is beginning from the premise, I won Georgia. We have at least 2 or 3, anyway, from 250 to 300,000 ballots were dropped mysteriously into the rolls. We think that if you check the signatures, and he talks about, quote, a couple of 100,000 forged signatures. This is people who forged their signature, or somebody else who Mr. X voted for Mr. Y and forged his signature. Then he goes on to Trump talks about people who were told that they couldn't vote because a ballot had already been put in their name. In other words, somebody already voted my ballot. I show up to vote. So here Trump is talking about Republicans who wanted to vote for him, but somehow their vote had mysteriously also been cast. Then he goes on to say, quote, you had 18,325 vacant address voters. So these are voters. They say, I live at so-and-so property. You go look over there. There's no such number. Or it's a commercial establishment. Obviously, nobody lives there. So that's 18,000 votes. Think of it. That alone is bigger than the margin. Then he talks about you had out-of-state voters. They voted in Georgia, but they were from out of state. He talks about some 4,925. And then he repeats, and I didn't lose the state, Brad. Then he goes, the other thing, dead people. So dead people voted. I think the number is close to 5,000 people. So, and Trump goes on like this. What he's doing is he's making his case, and then he summarizes his kind of opening statement by saying, so that's it. I mean, we have many, many times the number of votes necessary to win the state, and we won the state, and we won it very substantially and easily. Now, all of this is a way of saying, and the point here is not I'm not trying to make the point that all these claims about specific vote totals and the number of dead people are all accurate, because Raffensperger weighs in and says basically, Mr. Trump, we believe you're misinformed. And this other fellow, Germany, says, no, we've looked into that. We don't think the number's that high, or we think it's a lot lower, or we think the number is insignificant. But the point is not the merits of whether or not Trump is correct about his specific claims, but simply the fact that Trump is in no way suggesting that he lost the state, but nevertheless he wants Brad Raffensperger to, as a loyal fellow Republican, to, quote, find the votes. So this is really what this case is all about. Is somehow Trump trying to change a legitimate process, change a legitimate count? Not at all. Let's keep going with the call. Trump repeats, we won the state. When you add them up, it's many more times the 11,779 number. So Trump won by a much bigger margin. We have won this election in Georgia based on all this. And so as you go through this call, I won this election by hundreds of thousands of votes. I won the state by hundreds of thousands of votes. Trump can be kind of repetitive, but I think in this particular case, the repetition is to his benefit. Why? Because he's saying again and again and again, I won the state. There are multiple indices pointing to that. You don't even have to, the point about hey, we just need to find the 11,000 votes is we don't even have to add up all the votes that should be mine. Even if we look at some of these things, we'll still go easily over the 11,000 number. That's Trump's point with the so-called find the votes. That you don't have to locate every vote that he got. You only have to locate enough, and then Georgia tips over into his column. So how you can take this and make a case out of it and expect a judge to go along with it and a jury to go along with it, you can only do that if somehow you feel that you own the judicial process and that what you're conducting is not a real trial, but a show trial. If aches and pains are your problem, Relief Factor is your remedy. Debbie and I started taking Relief Factor a couple of years ago. The difference we've seen in our joints, nothing short of amazing. Aches and pains are totally gone thanks to this 100% drug-free solution called Relief Factor. Now, how does it work? Relief Factor supports your body's fight against inflammation. That's the source of aches and pains. The vast majority of people who try Relief Factor order more because it works for them. Debbie's a true believer. She can now do exercises that for a long time she wasn't able to do. It's been Relief Factor, a big game changer for her, her aunt, other members of our family, Mike here in the studio, and for many other people. You too can benefit. Try it for yourself. Order the 3-week quick start for the discounted price of just $19.95. Go to relieffactor.com or call 800-4-RELIEF to find out more about this offer. The number again to call, 800-4-RELIEF, or go to relieffactor.com. Feel the difference.